Hello and welcome to Setting the Stage, Episode 14, Nathan and Aenea.
I'm here today with Nathan. Hi, Nathan.
Hello.
Um, Before we get into talking about D&D, you want to tell us about yourself and who you are outside of the game?
Oh, sure. Outside of the game, I am a father of 4 offspring, and we also have several pets. Uh,
Cool.
I was a teacher for a very short time before I became a stay-at-home dad because we had more children. And teachers make, less than nurses. But I have
Yes.
been, been online for many years. I've used the name the Amethyst Dragon for since January of 1996. So it's been a while.
Okay.
So chances are, if you find the name online somewhere, it's actually me.
Cool. So, I guess that might be longer even than the Psionic Dragons.
Those probably came out in second edition, I think. So after that, but I may not have had the book that had them until afterwards.
Okay. Well, you can claim originality then. That's good.
Yeah, I needed a name for a website, and uh, like, okay, what is it going to be? Well, I like dragons, so we'll do something with dragons in there. And I've always liked the really deep, dark, rich purple of a really big amethyst geode.
Mm-hmm.
So I just combined them in the amethyst dragon.
All right. Cool. I just looked it up, and they came out in 2001. So there you go.
Really?
Yeah.
That late?
Yeah, they weren't a second edition
Huh.
thing. They were third edition.
Huh. Well, then I guess I'm the original.
Yeah, there you go. Good job.
I'm sure somebody else came up with them for their D&D game before that.
Yeah, yeah. That's dragons and wealth. It kind of just makes sense.
Yeah. I've been doing D&D stuff for a very long time, but we can get into that. We'll say more than 3 decades.
Cool. What got you into the game initially?
Initially, let's see, I was in 7th grade, and my best friend was given a bunch of first edition AD&D stuff from an uncle or something, and he wanted to play. And the Forgotten Realms novels about the time of troubles with like the gods coming to the world and causing all sorts of chaos had just come out, and we had read those. And he started running the game and really didn't know what he was doing. Um, but it had swords, it had magic, it had dragons, and I was hooked.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Eventually, I started running the game for myself and my brother. Uh, then with a couple of friends, it continued on, and I just I make homebrew stuff, and that started in high school. I had made myself like an entire booklet, pages and pages and pages of stuff. I recently, well, probably a year and a half ago now, discovered a folder where I had all those pages printed out.
Oh, cool.
So I've been mining that for old ideas to bring to 5th edition. A lot of them were okay. So many of them were so badly balanced, even for the 2nd edition. But you know, I was a teenager and had no concept of game balance.
I was gonna ask you, since you've been running the same campaign world for so long, if there was anything that you felt like you wanted to change or you have changed since you were in high school.
Oh, I've added things, I've changed things, I have moved things around. Um, I eliminated a whole continent that was used for like maybe a week when I was first developing the game world, and then the players went across the strait to the next continent, and that first continent never got used again.
Okay, that's a pretty big one.
So eventually, I just got rid of it. It has grown considerably, basically as I need it. It's still really one main continent, and then some islands and a big chunk off to the north and stuff like that. But basically, I add things to the world as I need them. And I change things too. I've changed the names of kingdoms. I've changed the names of all the villages in the kingdoms. I've changed the names of a couple of deities because I decided I didn't really like the original names.
Mm-hmm.
But being my own world, I can do that anytime I want.
Yeah.
I generally only do that between campaigns, so it's not, confusing the players. But, I can add anything I want, take away anything I want, put anything wherever I want it. And I have done that.
Yeah, I was going to say that it's not like established settings don't evolve over time as well.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I guess DMs also can just, take away or add stuff as they want in those settings as well.
Yeah. And I actually got started with my homebrew world because I was a teenager with basically no money.
Mm-hmm.
So I couldn't afford things like the Forgotten Realms box set or the Greyhawk Gazetteers and things like that. So I just started my own because it was free.
Yep.
My first map was a sheet of printer paper and colored pencils.
Cool.
Yeah, I had that first sheet of paper that I used. I still have that map.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, I still have mine too.
That piece of paper. There were like a dozen other sheets of paper that went with it to like build out the whole map. I've lost all of those, but for some reason, I still have that original one.
Okay, cool. Which region of the map was that here?
That would have been on the left side of the map, about the middle, north and south, west coast. There was a port city called Ravenport. It's got a different name now because it was taken over by orcs. But yeah, it was that very like the furthest west you can get on the map there.
Okay, I see what you're talking about.
And that was where they came over, and it just spread out from there across the north part of the continent, and eventually added like the middle and the south part of the continent, all the islands, things like that. I needed an icy region, so I added the ice reach off to the north.
Yep, I see that looks kind of like a spider to me with all those little legs going off of it.
Yep, lots of peninsulas, lots of bays. Then I'm like, okay, and then probably a few years ago now, I added the Isles of Kasan, which are a couple of almost triangular shaped islands off to the northeast.
Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah.
In my world, that is like the origin of the monks.
Okay.
And couple of the like Dragonborn sub races I made up, and like basically it's a kind of lame mishmash of like East Asian, so like some Chinese influences, some Japanese influence, some Korean influences, a little bit of Pacific Island influences. But it's basically like to explain, how these things, why monks are standard class in my game. It originated there, it kind of migrated over.
Okay.
Just like there's a big desert area. That's the Calithian Empire is what that's called in my game. And that's just a mix of like Babylonian, Arabian, ancient Egyptian, is Persian. It's just all mashed together there.
Okay, yeah, that Arabian Nights feel.
Yeah, bit of that. There's pyramids. That's where some of the mummies are. Stuff like that.
Okay, and you got this, I'm guessing, rainforest thing to the south of the desert.
Yeah, that is called the Wildlands. And it is an area that is basically unsettled. It was just dense jungle and forest and some grasslands. And I decided at one point in the history of the world that the goddess of nature looked at that and went, you know what? Let's make the animals smarter. And so all the animals in the wildlands have like human level intelligence.
Oh, okay. I was going to ask why there weren't cities in that section, and I guess that kind of makes sense, is because the animals are keeping people out.
No, not really. Before that, it was really just inhospitable because vegetation grows quickly in tropical areas, and it's not good for, structures.
Yeah.
And it's close to the tropics, so there's, bigger rainstorms and stuff like that. It's just not the greatest place to build things and have things that are built survive for people to settle there, so they didn't.
Okay. Yeah, it's a good enough reason too. If there's better places, go for those.
Yeah, there's lots of better places. There's lots of worse places too. But
right.
the animals there are pretty much they're not far from their wild natures. There's a lot of curiosity. They're not a lot of like evil residents there,
Hmm.
creatures from there. It's more, there's certainly predators and prey that those relationships are still there, but it doesn't really go beyond that.
Gotcha. Yeah, I'm curious about two other things here. You've got this like big crater in the middle of the map. At least it looks like a crater or a caldera or something. That big eye-looking circle.
Oh yeah, that's exactly what that is. It is a crater from sometime before recorded history. There is no record of what happened there,
Hmm.
except for me as the map maker went, yeah, that's a crater.
Okay.
And there's a ring of mountains that was like flung up as like the edges of the crater.
Yeah.
And there is that was oh I forget the original name of it. Something to do with dragons, but there was like a little kingdom in there, and then it got taken over by this evil sorcerer, fiend, vampire guy. Uh, and for several years, it was just permanent night inside there.
Wow. Okay.
It blocked out the sun, and so it was prime hunting ground for vampires and werewolves and all those creatures until somebody saved the world, well, or saved that kingdom, and brought back the cycle of day and night.
Right.
So now they've renamed most of the towns after like sunrise, sunset, day, uh, because they didn't have light for so long.
Okay. Yeah, I can see that.
That's one of those kingdoms where I renamed everything.
It's well, it's got a theme. It's good. I like it.
Yeah. There's a kingdom near there called the Shield Lands. Uh, all the villages there are protected by magical domes.
Okay. All the villages. There must be a lot of them.
Yeah, there's like 8 or 9, I think.
Okay. So a smaller kingdom. All right.
Yeah. It's mostly grasslands and farms and stuff like that.
So this crater looks really big. So if this is from an asteroid, it would be like the one that wiped out the dinosaurs or something like that.
Could be. I mean, I still have dinosaurs in my world, but they're
Okay.
not there.
All right. Yeah. Well, it wiped out all the dinosaurs that were next to the crater. We'll go with that.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Well, maybe you'll get to that later on when you're writing stuff.
Sure. I mean, my players have encountered dinosaurs. There's a island, not one of the two, like way off to the right in the upper right hand
Mhm.
corner. But there's one closer to the continent.
Oh yeah,
It's
I see.
called Death. It's called Deathwater. And there's dinosaurs there.
Okay. Actually, I meant not the dinosaur thing. I meant like
Oh, okay.
what the impact meant and what it represented at that time.
Oh, it. Uh, I'd say nothing.
Okay.
The impact was me going, I think there should be a big crater here, and we'll put some mountains around it.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
It was probably like 5 years later before I actually like named any of the towns or anything in there
Okay. Well,
because the players didn't go there.
yeah. Yeah.
For so much of my world, I have made it in response to needing a place to do something or the players going there and me needing to put something there.
Okay. Yeah. That minimizes your work, but lets you be responsive. That's cool.
Yeah. I don't put any limits on which way the players go in my games. Like, you want to go there? Let's go.
Yeah, that's cool. Okay, and the second question I had is this purple bit.
That is the Crystal Forest. It is it's entirely contained within a big kingdom, which is called the Sylvan Lands, run by elves, but it's also home to most of the Fey creatures in my world.
Okay.
Because they get along with elves, and they like forests and secluded places, and there's a lot of other forest land in there too. My world doesn't have a Feywild. It doesn't have another plane of existence for the Fey.
Right.
The Fey are natives to the material plane.
Okay. So you kind of have this is kind of a Feywild-ish section on the material plane.
Sure, there's weird stuff there, but there can be weird stuff anywhere. But one of the big features of the Crystal Forest are these. They're actually called the crystal trees. They look and grow like normal trees, but the wood is semi-transparent and kind of purplish. The leaves are like purples and blues, and just the solid purple is easier to work with on the map. But purples, blues, some pinks in there, and then the leaves are slightly transparent until they fall off, and then they die, and then they turn brown like normal leaves do.
Okay.
But there's just this whole section of forest that grows that way.
That's cool. There's actually some experimental solar panels that work that way too, where they're transparent so they absorb some light but allow it to penetrate to other panels below the top layer.
I haven't heard about panels below, but I've heard it as a coating on windows.
Okay, yeah, similar concept where you're just trying to not use all of the light and have it go through
Yep.
to somewhere else. So, yeah.
That makes sense too.
Yeah, there might have been a better application that people figured out for that specific style of engineering example.
Yeah.
Okay, so the purple is all that, like, it's crystal forest because the trees and leaves look like crystals.
Yeah, because they're semi-transparent, crystal-ish. I mean, there's actual like crystal formations and stuff scattered around, but the trees themselves are why the forest has that name.
Okay, cool. Yeah, that sounds very like magical and mystical, and also lines up with the fairy idea that you have for it.
Yeah, my current players do not want to go back there. They got caught in kind of a travel loop. Not so much a time loop, but they kept ending up back in the same place after a day of travel.
Oh,
over
like in those role-playing games, JRPGs, where like you have to go left and then right and then up or something to escape.
Yeah, there's actually a region in my game. There's a little town called Plains Cross. It's in the middle of the continent, basically. And if you start walking west from there, you're just in this open grassland that looks the same in every direction. And so you have to travel a certain distance and then change your direction to a specific direction. And eventually, if you do it right, you'll get out of there and you'll end up in this big valley. It's like called the Valley of the Lost. But going there is the key to getting a magic amulet that lets you access some magical travel portal gates. They look a lot like the Stargates because, I'm a nerd, and it was useful when I migrated my world to Neverwinter Nights. This was back in the early 2000s, and I didn't have an in-person game anymore, and Neverwinter Nights was out, and I was like, I can do anything with this. So I had, and my world of Aenea was an online 24/7 world for 11 years.
You actually got it to work on Neverwinter Nights? There's so much like effort that goes into that.
I had no life.
Wow, that's
other than that. I built a homebrew world in Neverwinter Nights, and I pushed that game way beyond where the designers thought it would go.
That's pretty cool.
I added things. I could program things like teleport spell and Ioun stones and summoning spells, and one of it was these portals that you put in the right combination. Portal opens, your character steps across it, and you get sent to the right part of the world that you were supposed to go. And so I brought those into the 5th edition version of my world.
Okay.
So, yeah, some of my things originated in the online incarnation.
Yeah, neat. They have that in 4th edition, too, with the portals, like, as they changed teleport to being a ritual portal thing instead of a individual effect.
I would not know about that because I never actually touched 4th edition. I went from 2nd edition in high school and then college, and then my adult life when I lived in Arizona. And then when 3rd edition came out, I bought the player's handbook, and it sat on a shelf for a year.
Mm-hmm.
And then I read through it one night, and I was like, I guess I'm changing all my stuff. And so I changed to 3rd edition because it was so much easier to use than 2nd edition. And my players had no problem changing at all. And then Neverwinter Nights came out. That was 3rd edition. So even when I didn't have an in-person game, I was doing 3rd edition. And then when my Neverwinter Nights server died, like the actual machine, because I had it in my basement.
Oh,
Like the motherboard and hard drive went. And I was down to like one player a day anyway.
yeah. Okay.
Then I started looking for D&D in person, and it was 5th edition by then. I had no reason to pick up 4th, and then, the little bit I looked at it went, you know what? 5th is better. I'll go with 5th. And I jumped right to 5th edition too as soon as I borrowed a copy of the player's handbook and read through it and went, okay, I'm buying one.
Okay. Yeah.
And then, yeah, I've been migrating stuff to 5th edition ever since. And I do a lot of homebrewing. It's not just my world, which we're talking about today, but like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of other things that I make for the game. I think my current count is about 1,300.
That's impressive.
Yeah, I'm writing a book.
Yeah, I saw that as your Discord activity thing.
Yeah, I've been doing monsters the last couple of days, getting those into the thing, and those take a lot longer than spells and magic items, just because all the formatting for the stat blocks.
Oh yeah, yeah. If you have to.
Anyway, Homebrew World is what we're discussing tonight.
Yes. A quick comment there is like if you do have to borrow a book, actually just doing it through the library is effective. There was a game system I wanted to learn about more, the Dune system, because the movie came out.
I didn't think of like the public library, but that makes sense.
Yeah. So your local library might not have a copy of a specific system like that, or it might be lent out to someone else, and you don't want to wait for a hold.
Yeah.
But you can do an interlibrary loan, so that's something I've been using a lot.
I get those a lot. Our local library is part of a system that covers like the western half of our state.
Mm-hmm.
Even back to my hometown, which is kind of funny. It's like an hour away.
But yeah, the interlibrary loans they'll do it local if they can, but it's an international system.
Oh, gotcha.
So I think once I got a book from like Costa Rica or something.
That is quite a distance.
Yep, and it's the library, so it was I wouldn't say free, paid for by taxes, and that's a more expensive version of what you can do with it. But I didn't have to pay a thing for it. I used the service.
There you go.
If you do want to try out a book, that's a way to do it. You can legitimate.
Yeah, there's a couple of game stores near me too where I can go, hey, does anybody have this? Can I take a look at it?
Yeah, obviously that too. Yeah, okay, so your campaign world about that.
Yeah.
So one of my basic questions is asking about like physical stuff, and I think we kind of just walked through that while I was looking at the map here, and I'll post a picture on the episode notes.
Cool.
So I had another question about your gods. You said you designed your own pantheon. You want to tell me more about that?
Sure. When I was first starting out, when you're writing adventures, you need a cult of this or something of that, and I just decided that what, I'm gonna come up with my own pantheon of deities. I'm not gonna use any of the ones from the Forgotten Realms or Greyhawk or Kryn or any of the published worlds, because at this point I was like, yeah, I'm doing my whole world here. It might as well have its own gods. I'm like, okay, what would be a good number? 20. We'll have 20 gods, and just everybody is going to worship the same gods. There's not going to be a pantheon for elves, a pantheon for dwarves, a pantheon for humans. It's just, if the gods exist in a world of magic, they're going to make themselves known to everybody. So it is a pantheistic thing. You may have a patron deity that you kind of more associate with, or you really do most of your prayers to, especially with clerics. But you still offer prayers to most of the other gods in appropriate circumstances.
Right.
Going on a long journey, you pray to the god of travel. If that journey happens to be by sea, you also pray to the god of the seas.
Yep.
So when I was making them up, I'm like, okay, 20 is a good number. You know what? Generally gods have genders, so let's do half male, half female. And then I'm like, okay, what do I need gods of? Well, I'm going to need a god of death. I'm going to need a god of life. Well, there's 2 right there. Every world seems to have a sun god because, there's the sun.
Mm-hmm.
So I got one of those. He's also the god of the moons.
Okay.
Just because. And light and darkness. He's like an opposition god, opposed to himself.
Okay.
Well, more balance than opposition.
Like Janus.
Yeah. So for 5th edition, if you have a cleric with a light domain, you're worshiping this guy. If you have a cleric of the darkness domain, which is one that I homebrewed, it's this guy. The same guy.
All right.
We're going to need elemental gods, so I got 4 of those. We're going to need a god of battle, because most of them have it. Ares, Mars. Actually, that's kind of the same guy. So I got one of those. A god of travel, a god of magic. We need a god for paladins, because this started out in 2nd edition. And all paladins were like lawful good, and this is where their power came from, was from a god. So I'm like, okay, I got one of those.
Yep.
Weather god.
Erroneous.
Why not? Nature god. Sure. We're gonna need a forging god. Probably. I mean, dwarves are really into that sort of thing. So
Yeah.
one of the gods is gonna be dedicated to that. I'm like, we're gonna need some evil gods. Well, let's do several types of evil. I have one. His name is Ragnar. He is the god of destruction and strife and insanity and chaos. He is a legitimately insane god. And a lot of, madness comes from them, and a lot of crazy people follow that guy. But then we have the other type of evil, another big type of evil, which I represent as Sorgoth. He's the god of snakes and poison, assassins, murder, corruption, lies, and foul play. He's probably the evilest of the evil deities. And not a lot of people worship him. Some people haven't even heard of him.
Okay.
Because those that worship him tend to do it in secret, because he's really about, secretive stuff.
Gotcha.
The only ones who really openly worship him are the dark elves. I do not have a spider goddess named Loth or Lolth in my world worshipped by the drow. I have dark elves. They don't call themselves drow. And they're not really born evil, but in the distant past, a servant of this god of foul play and lies convinced the elves that something bad was going to happen and led them underground. And since then, it's basically just become a cult that controls all the dark elves.
Okay.
The ones that it doesn't are ones who, have escaped to the surface and met people and been exposed to the outside world and gone, wait a second.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm not going back.
This is definitely a more realistic take on that, because the lore on dark elves and the official setting is just ludicrously natively evil, instead of having a led astray by an evil cult is more of something you can actually imagine.
Yeah.
And I like the snake thing too, because of the poison connection. So you don't even really need to reflavor them that much, because it's still it's a poisonous creature.
Yeah. And so there's like in their decor, there's a lot of cobra and snake themed things. The god's symbol is the marking you'd see on the back of a cobra's hood.
Oh, is that what that is? I was trying to figure it out.
Yeah. Yep. That's what that one is. Yeah, most of the symbols, the holy symbols, have some association with, what they are. You got a maple leaf. Looks awfully Canadian, but it's just a maple leaf, stylized maple leaf, for the goddess of nature. And god of light and dark is a circle. It's half white and half dark.
I should note to the listeners here that I'm following along on amethyst-dragon.com, which is where Nathan's got all of his stuff on Aenea.
Amethyst-dragon.com/Aenea, Aenea, would be the campaign website. If you go to just amethystdragon.com, it'll shunt you to a subpage of that. That's just all my hundreds and hundreds of homebrews. But if you take off the little HB file name at the end, it'll bring you to the campaign website.
I see. Okay. Well, still, yes.
Yeah.
That website.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm looking at the campaign map, and then all of the symbols as well. So that's why I was like talking about Sorgoth, because I'm looking at that webpage while we're talking about it. And
Yep.
Yeah.
There's one other evil-ish deity, Harcourt, the god of the seas, and he's not evil in like a wants to be mean to everybody. It's evil. It is a self-centered. He wants things for himself. He's the youngest of the gods, and he's basically like a self-centered teenager compared to the other gods.
Gotcha.
So pray to him, make offerings to him when you're going on a sea voyage or you're going fishing out to sea or something. He's happy.
Just wants his stuff.
Yeah. So there's lots of clerics of Harcourt, the god of the seas, who are really nice people. Eldriana, goddess of magic, that is one of the ones that I renamed. That one, her name was originally Mystara, and then I was looking through old stuff, and there's a campaign setting with that name. I'm like, yeah. And people keep misidentifying her as Maestra. And I'm like, no, this isn't the Forgotten Realms. No, so I'm changing her name.
Yeah. That's, yeah, that happens. So, you mentioned like wanting to create evil gods, and it made me think of the Kingdoms of Kalamar setting, which had a ton of evil gods, because it tried to have it be like balanced between good and evil choices.
Not a setting I'm familiar with.
Do you know the Knights of the Dinner Table comic?
Yes, I used to read it when it was in Dragon Magazine.
Right. So
Dragon Magazine, for those of you who are younger, was this thing. It was printed on paper, and it would be delivered to your house.
Yes, and it's basically been replaced by the Unearthed Arcana blog article things that they do. So it's kind of what it is now. It did have a digital publication for a while, but that has also since gone away.
Yeah, I looked at that, and that was not as anywhere near as fun to read.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because the old one had some comic strips in it that were regular, and Knights of the Dinner Table was published like once a month in there.
Yeah, and it also had like those cool connections with like different published works. So like they did a few I think 2 issues about like the Shannara series. And that got me into reading the Shannara books, and they did that for a couple different fantasy works like that.
Yeah, I've still got my parents kept all those magazines, and then they gave them to me a couple of years ago, so they're sitting on a shelf in my basement right now.
Okay, yeah. I've kept my favorites, but yeah, I definitely did not keep all of them.
The artwork on the covers was always amazing.
Yes, they are very good for that.
But yeah, I didn't feel the need to balance good and evil with the gods. I made the gods up for purposes that I would need in the world. I need an elemental cult. I need some, evil cultists, or they're probably going to be Sorgoth followers. I need, evil destructive hordes coming in. You know what? They're probably going to be following Ragnar because he lives on strife and chaos.
Mm.
So a lot of those were just like, what would I have a use for?
Yeah, no, follows the rest of your design philosophy.
Yeah, I don't tend to put in a lot of work where I don't need it. And if I need something now, I make it up.
Yeah.
So one of the benefits of having my own homebrew world for the last 30-some years is I run a weekly campaign. It is 4 hours once a week. And I'd say I improvise. I improv at least 90% of every session. When I was younger, I would spend 6, 7, 8 hours a week planning a session, and then the players would blow through it in like 4 hours. Well, I was running like 5 or 6 hour sessions at that point because I was younger.
Yep.
But now I don't. I improvise most of it, and it also frees up the players to go where they want. I don't have to try to limit them to what I've planned already. So that's one of the benefits of having a long-term homebrew world is I know where the stuff is. I know what is probably in an area they're going to. And if not, I'm going to make something up.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like you're breaking a connection somewhere else that you have with an established setting. That's my feeling.
Mhm.
Is that I don't want to be wrong, so I always feel like I
That's one of
can.
the things. Um, Nothing is canon in my world as far as the players are concerned, unless they've experienced it in that campaign.
Yes, that's a thing that I'm going to be playing with. No, that was from a different timeline, so that doesn't count anymore. Um, I was going to say earlier, the reason I brought up Knights at the Dinner Table is that after leaving Dragon magazine, they moved to Kenzer and Company, which is the company that publishes the Kingdoms of Calamar setting I was talking about with the evil gods.
Oh, gotcha.
It wasn't just some random, let's talk about Dragon magazine.
Oh, there's lots of random in D&D, but also lots of tangents, side quests.
Yes.
Another thing about an improv world, anything can become a side quest. If you describe something and the players go, wait a second, I want to know more. Let's go there. Sure. Yeah, and in-game events have actually like altered the world too. They're used in if you're looking at the map, the upper left-hand quarter of the continent used to be like 5 different kingdoms.
Mhm.
During one campaign, probably, well, that's got to be 20 years ago now. The orcs started to spread from their little area that they controlled, and they just totally overran these 5 kingdoms in a matter of like a year. And the players were involved with that weren't able to actually stop it. You know, that's the problem with dice rolls sometimes is you fail.
Mm-hmm.
And now the orcs for a couple hundred years now have had this empire of their own.
Wow. Kind of surprised they'd able to hold it on for that long.
Orcs in my world are just as smart as humans, but they're a very strength-based, warrior-based culture. In general, the gray orcs in particular. I like to describe them as like the Klingons in Star Trek: The Next Generation,
Mhm.
except without bothering with all that honor crap.
Okay.
So they respect strength. They respect earned authority. And the ones who are in charge actually have some very strong allies. They have ogres on their side that have helped them keep control and keep things running. And ogres in my world are a lot stronger than your regular D&D ogres.
Oh.
They basically replaced hill giants. I don't have hill giants in my world. I have ogres. And they're definitely smarter than hill giants are. So they are strong. So some orcs made allies with them and helped keep the other orcs in line, the other orc tribes in line, and they've had this empire that has been going strong for a couple centuries now.
Okay.
I don't have half orcs in my world, but I do have full-blooded orcs that can be player characters.
Gotcha.
I have one in my current campaign, and I turned them into, with 5th edition, I made them a base race with sub-races: gray elves, forest elves, snow elves, orcs,
Oh yeah.
gray orcs, forest orcs, snow orcs. So you can look at like pictures of them and go, oh, those are a lot of artwork. Hey, most of the gray ones are there. Oh, why is this orc green? Oh, that's a forest orc.
Yeah, he's got to blend in, right?
Yeah, they're not as warlike. They're more reclusive. And people of the world recognize the general societal difference between gray orcs, which command this huge empire over here, and forest orcs, which are found in a lot of different kingdoms. You just don't see them that often.
Because they're hiding in the trees.
They protect the fort. They protect their homes and stay. They're very much homebodies.
Okay. Yeah. I was going to say about the Empire thing, not just that orcs aren't usually something you'd associate with a long-living civilization, but also that most civilizations don't last several hundred years.
Yeah. Well, in a D&D game, I can fudge things.
Yeah.
You know, So yeah, the Orcish Empire's been there for a couple hundred years. The Elven Kingdom has been there for close to 5,000 years.
Yeah, see that I can believe but more because of the longevity of the species there.
Yeah.
Whereas for orcs, they live about the same length as humans, so you can sort of impose human
Yep.
expectations of civilization rise and collapse on them.
Yep. My world, I have standardized coins. You know, copper, silver, gold,
Mhm.
platinum.
Right.
I don't do Electrum.
Yeah.
I don't know anybody who does. But that was the elves' fault because a long time ago they were the ones who were doing like the overland trade with all these different peoples, and it just kind of became standardized. So even new coins, they'll be like the same types of coins, and they might have like the current ruler's face on one side of them, but the other side will always be a rather common design. So like all the copper coins have an image of a lantern on one side of them.
Okay.
Silver ones have a star design on them. The gold ones have a stylized dragon, and the platinum have an image of the two moons of the world. And so, like throughout history, you have this common coin, this common design of coinage, even if one side of it changes occasionally, just out of tradition and convenience. And so, like your NPCs will not really respond like, how many gold pieces is this? No, you say, how many dragons is this? Or how many gold dragons is this?
Okay.
How many copper pieces? No, it's it. How many lanterns? Just a little personalization there that still uses the default coins, especially because I like the powers of 10.
Yes, that part is nice. Yeah, I like the like how immersive that type of stuff is, but I've never had the patience to have customized coinage like that, where I have to keep track of which is which and get buy-in from my players for keeping track of which is which as well.
Well, part of it is I've used it for so long. The coinage names is probably probably about 20 years now that I've done that. And so that's when I'm introducing players to the world, that's one of the things that comes up early and gets repeated. And they're always using coins. So I keep repeating the names. Eventually they start repeating the names and it just, becomes settled.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Gold Dragons, there's a bit of like cross pollination because I think Game of Thrones has that as well. And Silver Star is like a sheriff's badge.
Sure.
So that makes it a little bit easier to remember for the names that you picked. Although I'm
The
imagining.
silver coin is the holy symbol of the goddess of luck.
Oh, okay.
So that circle with a star in it, that's one side of the coin. Flip a coin, there's luck right there.
Yeah.
That's why that's her symbol.
Yeah, okay. All right. And the lantern, I was thinking the others kind of made sense with what they were doing.
Yeah. The lantern is just because it's cheap and easy to make a design. And they're very, very... Lanterns are common. People use them.
All right. I'll take it.
That and I needed something just for the copper coins. I'm like, okay.
So you're running one campaign right now? Is that right?
Yes. For a while, I was running 2 weekly campaigns with 2 different groups. But schedules fell apart for one of the groups. And then I tried to start up another campaign that night with different players, and then my schedule changed a bit. I'm like, okay, I'll go with my one group. So my current campaign has been going for more than 2 years now.
Okay.
Same group of 5 players. When I was running the 2, it was really because I needed something to do during the pandemic.
Yeah, I can see that.
I moved online, and because I had played in person, and then the pandemic started, so we switched to online, and then that game kind of fell apart. So I started a new one. And then I'm like, I got more time. I'm going to start a second one every week. And that was a lot of work. But I enjoyed it. It was great till the one group fell apart. And I'm like, okay. Oh, look, changing schedule. But and one of the events from one of the group bled over into the other group.
Oh, that's cool.
Because I can do that. I set them starting at the same time, like same day of the year for both campaigns. And groups go at different paces and stuff. So one of them was like further ahead in the year, and then something happened, and when this other group ended up in the same place, there was this big change. They're like, "What is going on here?" Like, you don't know. That part of the sea is frozen in the middle of summer. Yeah, there was an incident with a giant pearl that fell into the sea in an interaction with ice magic, and
Oh my god.
the major port city where they all started
This is just
was
cat's
iced
cradle.
was iced in. Oh, and let's see, that ice also is a convenient bridge for undead to come across from the island where they bury all their dead from the city.
Oh no.
Yeah, because normally, even if things rise as the dead, what are they going to do? Walk along on the bottom of the sea where there are flesh-eating monsters down there that love corpses?
I mean, I was gonna
Yeah.
say yes, but I guess not.
Yep. Yeah. So, yeah, there's stuff that lives under there that eats corpses. So it's convenient for the city. Convenient protection. Oh, also, the ice went all the way to the island of Deathwater. So there's dinosaurs coming across, T-Rexes. Beholders live over there. Yeah, a couple of those came across.
This is terrible.
You can do that when you have, long-term games, and well, actually, any DM can do that sort of thing. That's not even just a homebrew thing. Any DM that's listening, go wild. That's what this game is.
So that pearl dropping in and freezing the ocean sounds a lot like the plot to Cat's Cradle. Have you read that?
I have not.
It's a Kurt Vonnegut science fiction book, and one of the plot points is that you can have a different type of ice crystal that's actually has less energy than water. So if you have a crystal that is that configuration and you drop it into the ocean, the entire ocean will release that extra energy and go into a lower energy state of that type of crystal. So then the entire ocean would solidify.
That is unfortunate. Yeah, this one was not the entire sea, but it was enough to be very concerning for this city that relies on trade.
Yes,
and the natural barrier of the sea.
Yes, and not having zombies and dinosaurs and beholders in their immediate vicinity.
Yep. So currently, that group is about a month and a half away from solving that problem.
Okay.
They made a deal with a giant fire dragon that's going to come and breathe fire, and then it's going to steal the pearl.
Well, of course.
Or somebody else. There's also a wizard that's really interested in the pearl, so there might be a fight over that. The pearl might sink into the sea, and they have ice on the bottom of the sea. I don't know.
Well, that doesn't solve the undead problem, because now you've frozen all the flesh-eating monsters.
Exactly.
And then the undead can just walk on the bottom.
Mm-hmm. Now there's still, it's not guaranteed to work when the fire dragon comes, but it's highly likely because they've gone on this big long quest to, along with visions from a god to, find this dragon.
Yeah. This is cool stuff. I like the sort of having to ally with. Is a red dragon or one of the metallic ones?
It's one I made up.
Oh, okay.
Its name is Molten Flame. It's an ancient dragon. It's a fire dragon.
All right, there you go.
Yeah. One of the things about my world too is dragon colors don't necessarily align with their breath weapons or their element.
Okay.
They often do, but it's not a set in stone thing. I had one player, not in my current group, but in the group that broke up. She was newer to the group. Was quite upset when they were facing off against a black scale dragon, and it breathed fire on them.
Yeah, you gotta look out for that.
And then acid.
Yeah, I loved the dragon breath feats from 3rd edition that you could give the dragons.
I don't think I ever saw those.
They were in the Draconomicon book, so it's probably an easy one to miss.
That would explain it. I did not have that one. I had the Player's Handbook, Dungeon Master's Guide, and the Monster Manual.
Yep.
And that was it. Everything else I made up.
Yeah. I mean, there is some stuff you missed, but the Draconomicon would have definitely been one to skip out on. But I just love dragons, so I got that one.
Yeah. Wizards of the Coast may not like me a whole lot because I'm not a big spender. Like I don't buy any of their adventure modules because I never run adventure modules ever. I've got my own homebrew world. I have adventures for people, and the one time I ever used it in the past, I ran part of the Temple of Elemental Evil, or Return to Temple of Elemental Evil.
Yeah, whichever one.
And that lasted like a month. And that was just with my kids.
Oh.
But other than that, I haven't bought like anything Out of the Abyss or any of those.
I've run some modules, but that was back when I was like learning how to DM, so having like the setup adventure was helpful for learning that stuff.
Oh yeah, if you don't know what you're doing, they're good examples of what to start with. You know, here's room descriptions, and here's way of describing this room and this room and this room, and you know, things you can put in there. I'm like, what is that? Let me look that up so I know what I'm talking about. What's a sconce?
So it's spelled like scone. Is it something you eat?
Yeah.
I find it's kind of inspirational to read through them for like not like psyching me up to go vote or something, but coming up with ideas.
Yeah.
So like the Draconomicon, for example, also has like prestige classes for dragons, and one of them is the dragon slowly turning into a god. So I actually used that in my not one campaign I'm DMing now, but the one before that, where there was a dragon that was taking levels in that prestige class. So it was trying to just kill a whole bunch of people so that it would gain enough experience points to level up.
That's cool.
So
it was XP farming.
Yes, exactly. It's just something I read there, and it turns into a whole campaign idea where there's this villain that's that, and we had, I think, like 14 levels of adventures in that campaign.
Yeah, anything can be inspiration. One of my kids, she's running a Curse of Strahd, but she's pulling in stuff from all these like podcast things she listens to. There's some SCP stuff. Right now, it's something about like the 12 Fears or something like that, and she's like tying that into characters from the Curse of Strahd book. And I was like, yeah, all that inspiration and mixing things and changing things up, and that is cool.
Yeah, be creative, cool make it your own.
Cool to listen to her talk about her ideas for that. And, she'll, what do you think of this? And why are these things killing the players directly? Because they're clearly powerful enough to do it. I'm like, what if they're something's protecting them? What if they're the hope? They are the embodiment of hope. And so these big fears recognize something in them, and so can't touch them directly. They got to work through their minions.
Yeah.
So throwing ideas back and forth. That is one of the, I don't run the adventure modules myself, but she's adapting that to make it something her own.
Yeah,
which is cool.
That's a really great experience to have with your kids too. Like I used to do that with my dad, so that's cool to see that you're doing it with her too.
Yeah, she's not running with me in the game; it's her friends and people online. I'm like, okay.
Yeah, I know. It's the same thing. Like I was doing with my dad, where I was like, he taught me to play, but then I wasn't playing with him anymore. So I was asking him for advice on, what makes sense for this, and how do I get to this specific scene that I want to happen.
Yeah, and I've made a couple of maps of like houses and stuff for the Ravenloft, the Strahd module.
Right.
Like mansion and a brewery and stuff like that because I have a program downloaded called Dungeon Draft for making like the battle maps. And then from the same guy, I have a program called World Draft. No, Wonder Draft. Wonder Draft. And that's what I use to make the world map for my campaign world.
Yep.
Like this is like the third iteration of it. It went from colored pencils and paper to a really, really bad computer graphic. And then now I've turned it into something much nicer looking, thanks to, that program.
Yeah, no, that's good. I like it.
It was $30. It was worth it.
Yes.
I think Dungeon Draft is about the same price. Definitely worth it.
Yeah, I've been using Campaign Cartographer and occasionally Dungeon Designer.
I've heard of Campaign Cartographer. I haven't heard of Dungeon Designer. But then again, I haven't. I wasn't looking for like dungeon making software until I was playing online and going, oh, I'm on Roll20, so I'm gonna need some stuff here.
Dungeon Designer was made by the Campaign Cartographer people. They have Campaign Cartographer, Dungeon Designer, and City Designer, which are all basically the same program. So there's not much that's different between them. You just have different assets and slightly different tools.
That's cool. One of the things I haven't had since 2nd edition is an actual like maps of my cities. Like I know them, so I can improvise. Yeah, you're going this way for this and this way for that, and like actual like maps that the players can see of the cities I don't have.
I found that city maps are helpful if you actually are basing an adventure in the city, but if it's not happening there, then it doesn't really matter. It's like, okay, yeah, you're in the merchant district, so you go to a shop, and okay, now you're going to go over to your hotel where you're staying, so you're going to walk for 20 minutes to get there.
Yep.
But knowing that the hotel is in the northeast side of the city and the merchant place is in the southeast does that improve how you experience the city? Not really.
It depends on how descriptive you get, I guess, and how much time they spend there. Like the starting city where my current campaign started is kind of in almost like a bowl-shaped port. And as you go downhill towards the docks, you get poorer. They actually have the docks district that's walled off, but you go through and the streets that run down to the docks. So that's the poor district down by all the smelly fish and everything. And then you go uphill, and that's where the market is, and that's where the nicer houses are. And then if you go to one side and up a little higher, that's where the snobby people live, and where the big temples are, and where the palace is.
But yeah, like you said, if they're spending more time there, it almost becomes like an adventure location.
Yep.
Is that you're not necessarily having combat encounters there, but you are having encounters there, like social ones. So it becomes.
They've had some combat in the streets, and that's where the little battle maps on the virtual tabletop come in handy. Like, here you are. I've done a couple of them in Theater of the Mind too, that are just like smaller skirmishes.
Yeah.
But I've found Discord and Roll20 work really well for people to play from across. I have one player out on the West Coast. I have one player down south somewhere. I've got 2 players that are local because they were part of my like in-person tabletop before COVID. And I've got 1 player who lives in Poland.
Wow. Okay. That's a different.
And they're all together in this world again because the party was split for a while.
How on earth do you line up with the time zone for the Poland person? Are they like a night shift worker or something like that?
She takes a nap and then she gets up to play the game.
Okay.
And it's like the early morning over there by the time it's done. So I say goodnight to everybody else and good morning to her.
I guess it's hard to find games in Poland because I can't imagine wanting to do that big of a time zone shift for D&D. But all right,
well,
cool.
Evidently, she went to school in Nebraska, I think. She went to college there for a little while, like an exchange deal or something.
Okay.
So she was familiar with parts of the U.S. and evidently the time lined up at the beginning of the pandemic, so she keeps playing.
The beginning of the pandemic was just sort of just one long day. Was how I described it.
Yeah.
It's a 2 month long day. Cool. In your survey, you mentioned that you like to play with new players a lot.
Oh, love it. Yeah. Like my current group, they were basically all newbies. The two pit that I'd played in person had only played fifth edition for a few months, like maybe 6 months before that, with me here. My brother hadn't played since second edition, and he's one of them. So they were both new to fifth edition, and like four of my players were basically new to D&D at all. And I picked new players on purpose for this campaign, because it was beginning of the pandemic, and everybody was wanting to play, and so many people were, having trouble finding games online.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So I purposely picked people who didn't get the chance to play before. I'm sure there's a lot of DMs who only pick like experienced players. So I picked the inexperienced players, and I had totally got the luck of the draw on this. I had like 190 people apply.
Wow.
Well, that was the first game. The second game was like 100 people. So like, and that was my first group that fell apart, had the 190 people apply to it because I left the application thing open for a week. Because so many of the listings I had seen are like people taking, the first people to contact them would be the ones who got in. And so if people weren't there to jump on that, like in the first 10 minutes, they didn't get into a game.
Yeah.
So I left the thing open for a week, and I have a questionnaire that's weird. On Roll20, it's just this list of questions. Answer these questions. And most of them have nothing to do with D&D. But it helps me get a feel for the players.
Okay.
Their level of creativity, looking for shared pop culture references. Because there'd be a movie, here's these 3 Arnold Schwarzenegger movies. Which one's your favorite? Granted, it was Conan the Barbarian, Terminator, and True Lies.
Okay.
Which one was your favorite? Everybody said Terminator because it's the only one they'd seen. I was like, what?
I haven't seen True Lies, but I've seen Conan.
You should. That's actually my favorite because I'm a big fan of action comedy, like the mix. So True Lies is actually my favorite of those 3, although they all have their merits.
Oh, I have heard about this one. Okay. No, I saw the poster and recognized it.
Yep. Very good movie.
Yeah.
So those shared cultural references, and I throw out like Spaceballs references. The homebrew stuff I make, a lot of it is like here's an idiom or a reference to a movie, and now it's something usable in D&D.
Oh, cool. Can you give like an example?
Sure. Let me go to my list here. 1 second. Nope, that's not it. Nope, that's not it. Why do I have? Okay. I gotta go to the right one that's got all the stuff. Most coveted ring. It is a magic cursed ring that when you see it, you want it. When you have it, you don't want to give it up.
Yep.
Guess what that one's a reference to?
I would guess the One Ring from Lord of the Rings.
Yeah. I have the Potion of the Fairy's Touch. That one is a Legend of Zelda reference. Then I have a Potion of the Bad Fairy's Touch. That is a reference to a little web show called The Legend of Neil.
Okay, I don't know that one.
I highly recommend that one unless you are not an adult. It was created by Sandeep Parikh, who played Zabu in The Guild.
I don't know that either.
Okay, so that was another web series. Felicia Day was like the creator of that. But, I saw that and I was like, oh my god, that's so funny. Miracle of Max's Marvelous Mixture. It's a potion coated in chocolate because it makes it go down easier.
Oh, right. Okay. Princess Bride.
Brings it back to life. Those are just some of them.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I'm seeing the creation theme there.
Yeah. Basically, anything can be an inspiration for homebrew, and it often is, even if it's weird. Like I have a subclass. Um, you know how some people can't spell rogue?
Yes.
They move the U to the wrong spot.
Yeah, Rouge.
Yeah, I made a rogue subclass with that.
Does it have the power to fly?
No, it has the power to get angry.
Oh, okay. From
It is
the
the
red
Rouge
face.
Rager. It is a rage rogue. Like barbarian rage, and when they see blood, when they see red, then they see red. And they can like sneak attack with a heavy weapon while they're raging.
Oh, cool. I like that. I always wanted to have that on my thief when I was playing.
It'd be fun.
Yeah, I was saying, can they fly? Because of the Rouge character in Sonic is like a sneaky bat.
Ah,
So
I have not played or watched any Sonic stuff.
it was. She's a pretty minor character, so even if you
Mm,
had, I wouldn't be surprised if you'd missed her. But yeah,
yep,
she's called Rouge, but is sneaky like a rogue and can also fly because she's a bat.
gotcha. Yeah, I went with Rouge as in the color red.
Yeah, yeah, I saw the connection there. Thank you.
Yep, just because minor misspelling.
Right. Do you have a homebrew that's like a favorite of your players?
Ah, I can't say really. Not that I can think of. I can look at the. I mean, some of the players are using homebrew. Um, like the one from Poland, she's using my Winter Archfey Warlock. There's a Fire Domain Cleric, and they're all using my homebrew races.
Mm-hmm.
Like I turned humans into a base race with sub races.
Gotcha.
Uh, Orcs base race sub races. Um, the half elves I've renamed as Sylvani, and they have sub races based on their elven parentage.
Cool.
So I've got one that's half wood elf and one that's half dark elf.
Yeah, I was thinking about doing something like that for my campaign where I have the elves from each different forest or a different subrace.
That's cool. I have I don't have tieflings in my world and never have.
Mm-hmm.
But when I was running it as a Neverwinter Nights thing, I added half demon sub races for 4 of the races.
Oh, cool.
So one of my characters is a demon blood human. Yeah, orcs get the demon blood, dwarves get the demon half race, and gnomes get the demon half race. Yeah, gnomes are fun in my world. They're a little bit crazy, especially the males because there are so many of them. I have it where, for gnomes in particular, 3/4 of them are males, and all the inheritances, the family names, the businesses, it's all matriarchal and all passed down through the daughters. And gnomish women have no problem. They will have 2, 3, 4, 5 husbands, and they'll pick them for their different skills.
Okay.
And so like these gnomish males are like competing for the attention of the fewer females, and since there's so many of them, they're just not like valued quite as much,
Mm-hmm.
and so they do the dangerous things like alchemy or becoming adventurers or talking to adventurers because adventurers are dangerous. But it's the women who are in charge in gnomish society.
Okay.
Just a little world flavor thing that has absolutely nothing to do with game mechanics.
Yeah, yeah, but it's a whole culture that you have that when it comes up, it comes up. That's cool.
Yeah. So lots of little things that can happen everywhere. Just I don't even remember why that one started. Just one day I was like, yeah, this particular gnomish woman has 3 husbands.
Uh,
And they're all different. Like totally different.
so it's that's the way it is.
Yeah. I did have one NPC like proposition one of the player characters in one of the groups. Um because he was tall and could reach things on high shelves. And that was just amusing to everybody.
Sometimes that's all you need is just being tall.
I mean, she was drunk too, but
well, sometimes all you need is to be drunk too. Is there anything else that you wanted to talk about that we didn't touch on yet?
Oh, not that I can think of at the moment. One of the discussions that's been going on your Discord server is about moons.
Oh yeah.
So I thought I'd actually touch on those.
Yeah, sure.
That has to do with my world's calendar as well. My world has 2 moons.
Right.
One of them is full every 28 days. The other one is full every 21 days.
Okay.
I have them line up when they're full. It just happens to work out 4 times a year. There's a double full moon. Or double full moons.
Right.
Not a good time to be out when there's werewolves, because they get much stronger. But that also happens to be the first night of every month, there's a full moon. And when the double full moons, that happens to be also line up at the start of a season. So the months in mine are 28 days long. All of them. They're all the same.
Mm-hmm.
And they start out, they're named after the seasons. So you have spring dawn. That's the first month of spring. You got mid-spring. That's the second one. You got spring dusk. That one is ending spring. And it just repeats for all the seasons.
Okay.
Wasn't my original intention, but it happened to line up perfectly with the second moon coming around and being full every 4 months or every 3 months.
Yeah, I was going to ask if you had thought about using a moon terminology for instead of spring dawn, like spring waxing or something.
I figured out, it's starting, it's the middle of it, it's the end, kind of like the day. So I'm like, dawn, midday, dusk. We'll just do that with the months.
Yeah.
And then for like each month, I don't have days of the week. There's not a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. The weeks are 7 days long. But in the game, and the people in the game basically tell you the day of the month. So it might be the 12th day of mid-spring, the 21st day of summer dusk.
Gotcha.
They know that, that 21st is after like 3 weeks. But they're not, they don't really have a weekend set.
I kind of get that. If you have a calendar that lines up that way, why would you bother having anything else?
And plus, I didn't want to use like the actual days of the week that we have, because my world has 2 moons. Why would there only be 1 moon day? Why would there, some worlds might have 2 suns. I don't. I have 1. But I don't have a sun day. I don't have a moon day. I don't have the ancient god Tu, or Woden,
right,
or Thor, or Frigga, or Saturn. We don't need days named after them.
Right.
So I just didn't give them names. But yeah, that is all with the moons. The moons are just normal moons. One is silvery gray, like Luna, our moon. And that one's called Argenta, because silver. And the other one is Verda, smaller green moon. And the only real influence they have is on the calendar. Happens to line up with the seasons because of convenience. And that's what you can do with a fake calendar.
Yep.
And it makes lycanthropes stronger when they're both full.
So, I guess this isn't quite how it would work, but does it make them lycanthropes weaker when they're both new?
No, then they're normal,
Yeah, I know they'd be
human.
They'd be their mortal forms instead of the animal forms, but I was just curious if they would be like even more mortal than animal in that case.
Nah.
Okay. Yeah.
They're very well hidden when they're not in their hybrid or animal forms.
Yeah.
But when both moons are full, then they regenerate faster, and like you knock them down, they'll get back up, and they're bigger and stronger. So those are nights when you just don't want to be out in the wilds.
Yeah, I can imagine.
But there's the thing, multiple people in the Discord have talked about is the moons. So there's my moons.
Yeah, there's your moons.
Argenta and Verda.
Yeah.
Named after the color for each of them. Silver and green.
Yeah. Maybe when this episode comes out, we can reignite the moon conversation.
But yeah, that's pretty much it. It's Aenea is a world I made up because I was poor as a teenager and just stuck with because then it was mine and I could do anything I want with it.
Yeah. I pretty much done the same thing over here too. Do you have any advice for other DMs that you want to give before we sign off?
Yes. Don't overwork yourselves. This is a game. Yes, it's an involved game. There's a lot of writing creativity that goes into it. But don't, unless you enjoy doing the extra, like, world building stuff, maybe just have some really basic ideas and don't bother fleshing stuff out until the players are going to be involved with it. Save yourself some effort. Enjoy your time. Unless that's your enjoyment. If your enjoyment is getting into the nitty-gritty details and like writing everything out, go ahead to do it. But you don't have to. It's a game. A great game that I have been hooked on since I was in 7th grade, but still a game. That's why it's fun.
Yeah.
And it will always be fun, no matter what Wizards of the Coast or Hasbro tries to do.
Yeah. I was gonna add on to that another thing when you're designing stuff that you're not gonna just because it's fun. You should remember your audience isn't necessarily your players in that circumstance. It might just be yourself.
Oh yeah, do stuff that you're gonna enjoy. Make sure you are having fun with it because you are a player. You're the dungeon master, but you are playing a game still. You are having fun. Should be having fun with it.
Yes. But yeah, like you should make stuff that's fun for you, and you should be having fun with the game. That's definitely part of what I was saying there. But I also meant that, if your players aren't interested in the stuff that you're designing, like that's not for them, then you shouldn't like force feed it to them either.
Yeah, well, that's true too. I'm a big proponent of player initiated stuff. I had one player in person who was not happy with me not telling her what to do next, what the next step was. I prefer my personal players to have some motivation and do some stuff. So for the DMs, the world builders out there, if the players aren't really going toward what you're really wanting, try to get them to go off on a direction that they want to go, and then take the thing you really want to do. Like maybe there's a piece of it that you really want, like a dungeon or a location that you really want them to see because you put in a lot of work planning on it. Move it into their path.
Woo! Quantum Ogre.
That is the great thing about Homebrew Worlds is none of that stuff is canon. If they haven't encountered it, you can put it anywhere you want.
Yeah.
Magic Fountain? Sure. Ancient Temple? Have at it. Oh yeah, there was an earthquake and the road is blocked, so you got to go around. Oh, interesting. There's this old ruin here.
Yeah.
Well, you're not really railroading that way. It's just, it happens to be there. So you get to, even if they're not necessarily interested in following along with a particular story, elements of it, and even elements of your story, your setting, you can put in their path wherever they're going, and then they might become interested and tie it back to what you wanted. It's just in a more convoluted path.
Well, like you said, like you're a player too, so I feel like you also want to play with people that are going to respect that. I designed an adventure that takes place in a ruined temple, like you said.
Mm-hmm.
So, if your players come upon a ruined temple, they have a responsibility to engage with the temple because that's what you brought for them to play.
Yeah. Or there could be just like my particular players would go, ooh, what's that place? Let's go check it out. But there might be, catch a glimpse of something shiny or something that they're fighting runs off to there. So that, there's an enticement there too. You can always work little things in. Especially if you've been playing with your players for a little bit and you kind of know what, makes them tick. You can entice them. If they're totally new players, you can just say, like during session 0, hey, people, I'm providing a setting for you and adventure hooks, but it's up to you to take an interest in things and grab those hooks.
Yes.
You don't have to take them all by any means. You're not going to take every adventure hook. And also, as the DMs, if your players get fixated on something that has absolutely nothing to do with your pre-planned adventure, I suggest going with the flow, letting them investigate things, and in between sessions, perhaps try to come up with a way that thing that they fixated on links to where you want them to go. That way, they're getting to follow where they want, and the work you put into planning that adventure, that dungeon delve, that particular thing, you don't feel like it's wasted time just because they went off in a different direction. And hopefully you're having fun doing the planning, so it won't feel like wasted time. Anyway, I'm going to say that's probably been plenty of talking from me. I'm going to do some more talking next week in a different podcast.
Cool.
But I have been listening to all of these, and it is very cool to hear everybody's takes on their own world and their ideas for their own world to make it their own, which is the coolest thing about having a homebrew world. I mean, you can have like Forgotten Realms and Greyhawk, and you can have your own adventures in them, but I think a homebrew world is more personal.
Yeah, definitely.
And it's my preferred way. As if I'm playing in a game, I prefer to be in somebody's homebrew world because then I get to explore everything. I don't know everything that's there already. And I have a lot of like cultural references to like Forgotten Realms and stuff because I used to read the novels and play the video games and stuff like that, where a homebrew world is all new and it is wonderful. Even if it's like overused tropes or whatever, but you're mixing them together in a different way.
Yeah. I brought up the Shannara series earlier. It's like all tropes and derivative stuff, but it's popular. People like it. So same thing can be true.
If it's mixed together in an entertaining way, or in a way that, makes some sort of sense. And this is a world, D&D is magic. Not everything has to make sense. That's another thing for world builders and DMs out there. Not everything has to have an explanation. Sometimes it can just be, the magic's weird, man. Deal with it. Yeah, there's a troll there. Not because you said it's been a while since we faced a troll, which actually happened in one of my campaigns once. Where it's like, it's been a while since we faced a troll, and literally the next room I had planned a troll. That was just funny timing on their part. But it could be. Could be just because of magic.
Yeah.
Biggest thing to remember, D&D is a game. Everybody needs to have some fun.
Including you.
So have fun creating.
Yeah. Well, thanks for coming on the show, Nathan. It was good having you here.
Yeah, thanks for the invite you put out to everybody. It's nice, and I really do like listening about other people's worlds too. So, yeah, I'm gonna say have a good night, have a good day, whenever you happen to be listening to this. Have fun.
Yeah. Take care.